The auction hall was loud, filled with alien nobles and traders from many species, all wearing fine robes and shiny armor. They laughed, bargained, and placed their bids for rare creatures, weapons, and exotic slaves. At the center stood the powerful and feared alien baron, Lord Keller. His skin was dark gray, his eyes sharp and cruel. At his side knelt a girl, young and delicate. Her skin was pale blue, and her black hair hung messy around her face. She was covered in dirt, her clothes torn and rough like old rags. A black cloth gag covered her mouth, but even without it, she never spoke. Everyone in the galaxy knew it. Baron Keller's daughter was mute. "She's broken," Keller sneered, turning to the crowd, completely silent since birth. "She cannot speak, cannot scream, and definitely cannot disobey. Worthless." Laughter echoed around the hall. The girl lowered her head in shame, her hands tied in front of her. Keller pointed at a human in the back, standing quietly, watching everything. He was tall, lean, and wore a dusty coat. His name was Jace Morrow, a small-time trader from Earth who never made loud deals. He didn't fit in this place of riches and cruelty. "You, human?" Keller called with a grin. "You look like you need a gift. Take this one. No charge. Just don't return her." The room roared with laughter. Some shouted cruel jokes, others whistled and clapped. Keller loved the attention. He expected the human to be confused, maybe scared, or maybe to leave her behind like trash. But Jace didn't laugh. He walked forward. Slowly, his eyes met the girl's for a second, and something passed between them, something quiet, soft, and deep. He kneeled beside her and untied the cloth around her mouth. She didn't speak, didn't move, just stared. Jace turned to Keller and said, "I'll take her." "Good." Keller smirked. "Enjoy your little statue." Jace placed a warm hand on the girl's shoulder. "Come with me, you're safe now." She didn't reply, but she followed, outside the hall. The cold wind blew across the sandy cliffs of Valter Prime. Jace led the girl to his small hovercraft parked nearby. She sat quietly in the back, her eyes never leaving the floor. "Name's Jace," he said gently. "I won't hurt you. You can rest now." She stayed quiet, of course, but he didn't expect an answer. He gave her a blanket and a water bottle. She didn't touch them at first, but later she slowly drank. Her hands were shaking. The ride was long, and Jace didn't speak much. He wasn't sure why he took her. Maybe he just couldn't watch another life treated like garbage. Maybe there was something in her eyes, pain. Yes, but also something hidden. Hope, maybe. When they reached the edge of a quiet farming colony, Jace led her into a small home built from old starship parts. Inside was warm and simple. There was no luxury, just peace. He showed her a clean room with a soft bed, fresh clothes, and a small light. "This is your space," he said. "No one will bother you, no chains, no orders, just you, your time." She looked at him for a long second, then slowly stepped inside. She touched the edge of the bed like she didn't believe it was real. Jace walked out and let her rest. That night, she sat on the bed, her knees pulled to her chest. Her mind was full of broken memories, shouting, silence, punishments. Her father's voice saying she was useless, empty, mute. Her fingers traced her lips, wondering what it would be like to speak, just once. She looked at the door Jace had closed gently. Behind him, he didn't touch her, didn't yell, didn't try to fix her. He just gave her a room. A name floated in her head. Jace, her lips didn't move, but her eyes blinked slowly. And for the first time in her life, the silence didn't feel like a prison, it felt like a choice. She lay down and her eyes closed, but her heart beat a little faster. Maybe, just maybe, her story was not over yet. Morning sunlight streamed into the small room through a cracked window. Soft light danced across the walls made of old metal panels and recycled starship glass. The blue-skinned girl lay still on the bed, watching dust particles float in the air like stars. Her eyes were open, but her face showed no emotion. Jace had left a simple dress folded near the foot of the bed clean. Soft, nothing fancy, the kind of clothing that didn't belong in cages or auction blocks. The kind of clothing that said, "You belong somewhere, not you are owned." She slowly sat up. Muscles stiff and sore from nights of sleeping on cold floors. Her hands touched the cloth with care. She didn't understand why the human had given her space, food, kindness and silence. Not commands. Down the hall, Jace was in the kitchen area, humming softly while making food. The scent of something warm and unfamiliar drifted into her room. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but she stayed still. She was used to hunger, used to waiting for permission, for orders, for someone to speak. Before she could move, but no one came. No orders were shouted, no punishments followed her silence, just peace. Jace placed 2 plates on a small table. One had fresh bread and eggs. The other had warm broth and fruit slices. He looked at the hallway, wondering if she'd come out on her own. He didn't want to force her. He knew what broken looked like. She was more than broken. She was buried inside herself. He sat down and waited. Minutes passed. Then he heard footsteps, soft like feathers. She appeared at the doorway, wearing the dress. It was slightly big on her, but it was clean. Her hands were clenched at her sides. Her shoulders tight, but her eyes, those quiet, deep eyes, searched his face like she was waiting for a trap. Jace stood slowly and pulled back the chair for her. "You don't have to talk," he said calmly. "Just eat, if you want." She stared at the chair, then at the plate. Then slowly, step by step, she sat. Her hands shook slightly as she picked up a spoon. She sipped the broth, then again, then more. Jace smiled but didn't speak. She was still mute, but for the first time, someone listened to her silence without judgment. For days, this was their routine. Jace gave her space, food, fresh clothes. He took her for short walks around the settlement, but never touched her without her consent. The other colonists watched, curious, but said nothing. Most had seen pain before. They understood trauma had no language. She remained silent, but something was changing. She began to look around more. Her eyes no longer stayed stuck to the ground. She watched the birds fly across the open sky, watched the wind blow through golden grass, watched children laugh as they played with hover drones. Sometimes her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but no sound came. And Jace never pressured her. He just offered a smile and let the moment pass like wind through trees. One afternoon, Jace brought out an old sketchpad. He handed her a pencil and gently slid the book toward her. "You don't need words to speak," he said. "You can draw, if that feels better." She blinked at the pencil. Her hand hesitated, then slowly reached out. Her fingers curled around the pencil like it was made of glass, precious and fragile. She placed the tip on paper, unsure what to draw, but then her hand moved, slowly, shakily. Lines began to appear, shapes formed. First a circle, then a small figure, a tall one beside it. Jace leaned over and saw a picture of him and her standing together under a tree. He didn't say anything, but a soft breath escaped him. His heart ached with quiet hope. She looked up at him for the first time, not with fear, but with something else, something soft. Trust. That night, Jace found her outside, sitting alone under the stars. She had wrapped herself in a blanket and was watching the night sky like it held answers. He sat beside her without a word. After a while, he said, "You don't have to speak. You're still heard." She didn't move, but something shimmered in her eyes. Not tears, but memory. Memories of pain, of being called useless, silent, less than alive. Her father's words echoed in her head. You're not a real daughter. You're a shame, but now someone was telling her the opposite without saying much at all. Jace didn't know her full story, but he didn't need to. He saw her just as she was, and in her silence, something began to heal. The colony buzzed with quiet life. Small homes sat along dusty paths, and alien children ran between solar towers and dried alien trees. Life was slow, peaceful, and simple, just the way Jace liked it. He worked at a repair shop near the outer fields fixing broken tech, drones, and generators. Most days were quiet, but now someone was with him, even if she never said a word. Lyra sat near the door of his shop, knees pulled up to her chest, drawing quietly in the same sketchbook he had given her. The pencil moved slowly in her small hands, as if each line took great effort. Her long black hair now fell clean and soft. Over her shoulders, her clothes fit better, now simple but neat. And her skin looked healthier. She still hadn't spoken, but her eyes, they had changed, no longer full of fear. Now they held curiosity. And something else, something warmer. Jace treated her like she wasn't broken, like she wasn't a shameful mistake. He didn't speak to her like a child, or treat her like a problem. He asked simple things like, "Do you want bread or soup? Or would you like to walk today?" And if she nodded, he smiled. If she didn't, he never pushed, never forced. One morning, he handed her a small flower he'd found near the fence, bright blue blossom with a soft glow. "For your hair," he said gently. "It matches your eyes." She stared at it, confused. Her hands trembled as she took it slowly, holding it like it was too fragile to keep. No one had ever given her something so small, so kind, without expecting anything in return. She didn't smile, but she tucked the flower behind her ear, and when Jace looked away, her lips curved just a little. That afternoon, they walked to the market square together. Lyra stayed close to Jace's side, her eyes watching every strange alien face. Her steps were careful, unsure, like she expected someone to strike her at any moment, but no one did. Instead, a group of alien children spotted her from across the square. One of them, a tiny creature with furry arms and big blue eyes, ran up to her and offered a piece of candy. Lyra froze. The boy smiled and said, "You're pretty," then ran off laughing. She stood frozen, staring at the candy in her hand, like it was a weapon. Jace bent down beside her and whispered, "It's okay. He just wanted to be nice." She looked at Jace, then at the candy, then slowly slipped it into her pocket. Still no words, but her fingers squeezed it tight like a piece of memory she didn't want to lose. Later that evening, while walking home, they passed by a group of traders talking loudly. One of them recognized Jace and sneered, "Hey, is that the Baron's broken daughter?" She's still silent like a statue. Jace paused but didn't respond. The trader chuckled. "Waste of air. That one should have stayed locked up." Lyra heard every word. Her shoulders tensed, her hands curled into fists. She wanted to run but didn't. She kept walking beside Jay's, heart pounding, back home. She didn't eat, just sat on her bed, staring at the wall. Her thoughts screamed inside her head. Why did he take me? Why didn't he laugh like the others? Why does he treat me like I matter? She wanted to speak. She wanted to say thank you, or don't leave me, or please don't listen to them. But her mouth stayed shut, like it had been sealed by years of fear. That night, Jay sat outside under the stars again. Lyra came out quietly and sat beside him. The silence between them felt different, now not heavy or awkward, but safe. He handed her a cup of warm tea. She took it without hesitation, sipping slowly. "I know people talk," Jay said. "I don't care what they say." Lyra looked at him. Her eyes were wide, soft, glowing in the starlight. "You don't have to speak for me to know what's in your heart." He said gently, "You're strong." Even in silence, her hand moved slightly. just enough to brush against his. She didn't pull away. A few stars fell across the sky above them, like silent wishes burning through the night in her chest. Something stirred, something powerful, something aching to be free. She looked up at the stars, then down at her hand, still touching his, and for the first time, she wanted to speak, not because someone told her to, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The night was colder than usual. A soft wind crept through the metal walls of the house, brushing against the windows with a lonely whistle. The stars outside were dim, hiding behind gray clouds, and inside the house, everything was silent. Lyra lay curled in her bed, the blanket wrapped tightly around her. Her eyes stared at the wall, unblinking. Her chest rose and fell quickly, as if she were running, but she wasn't. She was frozen. Jace was asleep in the other room, unaware that her breath had turned shaky, that her hands had clenched into fists beneath the blanket. She tried to shut her eyes, but the memories came anyway. It started, like always, darkness. Chains and her father's voice. "You are no daughter of mine." Baron Keller's cold voice echoed in her mind. A daughter should speak, obey, answer, scream if needed. You're just a burden. She remembered the pain, not just from punishments, but from the emptiness in her chest every time he walked past her like she didn't exist. The way he let guests mock her, the way no one stopped them, the way she was left alone. In cold rooms for days, silent, forgotten, useless. Sometimes she tried to make a sound in anything, but no voice came out, just breath, just tears. Then the tests began. Cruel experiments by doctors her father paid to fix her. Needles, wires, lights in her face, voices demanding results she couldn't give. She remembered the moment her throat had burned as they forced sounds out of her using machines, but still, no words came until she stopped trying, until she accepted the silence like a cage she would never escape. Lyra sat up now, her face pale, her chest tight. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks, her breath hitched, and her body trembled. She wrapped her arms around her knees and rocked slightly, a habit from her childhood, a small comfort she had never lost. She wanted to cry louder, scream, speak, something, but all that came out was a faint, broken whimper. The door creaked open slowly. Jay stood there, wearing a loose shirt, hair messy from sleep. His eyes instantly softened when he saw her. He didn't say anything, not at first. He simply walked in and sat on the edge of her bed, keeping a gentle distance. "You okay?" he asked softly. Knowing she wouldn't answer, she looked away, wiping her tears with her sleeve. Ashamed to be seen like this, Jace didn't push. Instead, he spoke slowly. "You don't have to explain. I don't know what you've been through, but I can see it's still hurting you. It's okay to cry. You're safe here." Lyra didn't move. But after a long pause, she did something small, so small, it was easy to miss. She leaned toward him, just a little, not enough to touch but enough to show she didn't want to be alone. Jace stayed still, letting her come closer at her own pace. After a few minutes, she finally rested her head lightly against his arm. Her breathing was shaky, but it began to slow. He sat beside her silently, letting her cry, letting her feel without fear, letting her be broken without shame. That night, she fell asleep against him, her face still wet with tears, her heart still heavy, but not alone anymore. The next morning, she woke before him. His arm had slipped behind her back to support her while she slept. She stared at his peaceful face, so different from the cold faces she had known all her life. A whisper formed in her mind, "Thank you," but no sound left her lips. Still, she reached up and gently, quietly, tucked the edge of the blanket around him before getting up. Her hands no longer trembled as much. She walked to the window and looked out at the morning sky. The clouds were clearing, and golden light touched the earth somewhere inside her. The cage was cracking, Bit by bit, she wasn't ready to speak. Not yet. But for the first time, she wanted to, not out of fear. Not from pressure, but because she had something to say. Later that day, Jace handed her a small device, an old voice pad used for text-to-speech. "You don't have to use it," he said gently. "But maybe it helps, if ever you want to. Say something." She stared at it in her hands for a long time. Her thumb brushed over the screen. She didn't press any buttons. But she didn't put it down either. And Jace smiled quietly, knowing that even silence could be a step toward sound. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the colony's open plains. Children's laughter echoed in the distance as they played near the solar fence. Birds with glowing wings circled above, singing in strange, soft tones. The day felt warm, most peaceful. Lyra sat by the window, drawing quietly in her sketchpad. Her fingers moved slowly, carefully, sketching something new. A small child with wide eyes, holding a flower, standing beside a taller figure with human features. She stared at the image for a long time. Her hand trembled as she shaded in the human's coat, Jace's coat. She didn't understand the feeling growing inside her. It was heavy, but not painful. Warm, but not frightening. Just new. Outside, Jace was helping fix a broken generator near the colony's west wall. A few kids gathered nearby, including a small alien girl named Nara. She had orange fur, big eyes, and a curious smile that never left her face. Lyra had met Nara once when the little girl had handed her a glowing berry and ran away giggling. It was the first time Lyra ever remembered smiling. Even just a little, Nara ran toward the fence, chasing a ball that had rolled too far. Jace shouted after her, "Stay back, Nara. That gate isn't secure." Too late, the old security door, rusted and damaged, gave way as Nara leaned against it. She tumbled through the opening and straight into danger. Beyond the fence, a wild crawler, large alien beast with 6 legs and sharp teeth, roared from the brush. It had been lurking nearby, hiding, waiting. And now it charged toward the small girl. Screams echoed through the field. Lyra was already running. Her bare feet hit the ground hard. Her body moved on instinct. She didn't think, she didn't hesitate. She just ran. Nara stood frozen, eyes wide, her small frame unable to move. The crawler was fast, too fast, but Lyra was faster. She reached the girl just as the beast lunged. Without thinking, she threw herself over Nara, wrapping her arms around the child and turning her back toward the attacker. Pain shot through her side as the creature's claws raked across her shoulder, but she didn't let go. Jace was already sprinting with a plasma tool in hand. He struck. The crawler sighed, forcing it to stumble back. Other colonists arrived seconds later and scared it off with blasts and loud sirens. The danger was gone, but Lyra wasn't moving. Jace dropped to his knees beside her. "Lyra. Hey, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered. Her arm was bleeding, but she was alive. Nara was crying in her arms, unhurt, only shaken. "You protected her," Jace whispered, gently lifting Lyra. "You saved her life." She didn't respond, but her fingers lightly squeezed his sleeve. He carried her back to the house as others cleared the area. Inside, he cleaned her wounds and wrapped her shoulder with bandages. His hands worked carefully, and his face stayed calm. His heart was racing. "You didn't have to do that," he whispered, "but you did. You didn't even think of yourself." She sat quietly, her head resting on the wall. Her eyes stared down at her wrapped hand. Her breathing was slow but steady. Jace sat beside her, his voice soft. "That was brave, Lyra. That was more than brave." Silence settled again, but it wasn't empty. Something had shifted. Later that evening, Nara's mother arrived at Jace's home with the little girl. Nara held something small in her hand, a charm carved from glowing wood. She stepped forward. and looked at Lyra with wide, grateful eyes. "You saved me," Nara said gently, holding out the charm. "You're a hero." Lyra blinked slowly, her lips parting just a little. She reached out with her uninjured hand and took the charm, her fingers brushing Nara's. The moment was simple, soft, quiet, but powerful. Jace stood behind her, watching silently, his eyes filled with something close to awe. "You don't have to speak," he whispered in his thoughts. "You're already telling the world who you are." That night, when the stars rose and the colony lights dimmed, Lyra stepped outside, wrapped in a light blanket, the charm still rested in her palm. Warm from her touch, she looked at the sky so big, so open, and whispered a single sound in her mind. Alive, she turned back and saw Jace watching her from the doorway. He didn't say anything, just smiled softly, and for the first time, Lyra took a step toward him, not from fear or need, but from choice. She stood in front of him, reached up with one hand, and gently touched his face. Jace's breath caught in his chest, not from surprise, but from hope. She hadn't spoken yet, but she was no longer silent. The colony slept quietly under a silver moon. The wind carried soft dust across the empty roads, and distant lights blinked above in the sky, silent ships passing through the stars. Inside the small home, Jace sat near the workbench, trying to fix an old communication tablet. He worked slowly, carefully, but his mind wasn't on the wires or circuits. It was on her. Lyra, she had changed. He had seen it in her eyes. In the way she now walked into the room instead of hiding in corners. In the way she stood close to him without fear. In the way she had risked her life for a child without hesitation. And in the way she had touched his face, like she was learning what kindness felt like. He had not heard her voice, not even once. But he had learned her language, one made of silence, of soft gestures, of trust slowly blooming in broken ground. He smiled at the memory, then looked up as soft footsteps approached. Behind him, Lyra stood in the hallway, dressed in soft nightclothes. Her hair was loose, falling like silk around her shoulders. She looked nervous, more than usual. Her hands were clenched around something small, the charm Nara had given her. Jace stood, brushing off his hands. "Can't sleep?" he asked gently. She nodded once. He motioned toward the open chair. "Come sit, I'll make you tea." She sat down slowly, her eyes fixed on the charm. Turning it over in her fingers, Jace poured water into a metal cup, letting it warm on a coil beside them. He noticed her lips move, but no sound came. Her mouth had formed a shape, like she was trying to speak. He froze. She looked at him quickly, startled, then dropped her gaze. "Ashamed?" "No, it's okay," he said gently, kneeling in front of her. "You don't have to force it, but if you want to try, I'm here." Her lips moved again, slower this time. Her eyes watered just slightly as she pressed her lips together and tried again. Air escaped her throat, but no word. Still, she tried again and again. Her mouth shaped something small, soft. One syllable, and then a sound. Jace blinked, his heart stopping in his chest. Jace. It was barely louder than a whisper, soft as falling dust, but it was real. His name from her lips. Lyra gasped and covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes wide in fear. She looked ready to run, but didn't, because Jace was still, kneeling there, frozen in front of her. Not laughing, not shouting, not shocked. He was crying. He placed a hand on his chest, smiling through the tears. That was the most beautiful sound I've ever heard. Lyra's hands shook, her breathing was unsteady. Her mouth opened again. "Yeah." See, this time clearer. She covered her mouth again, tears falling down her cheeks. But her eyes were shining. Jace didn't move closer. He just whispered, "You did it. You spoke. And no one forced you. You chose to." She nodded slowly, still crying, and for the first time in her life, Her voice had been heard and it was met with love the next day. Word spread through the colony like fire through dry grass. The Baron's mute daughter. She spoke. Whispers floated in the air, passed between markets, spoken inside homes. Some didn't believe it. Others were amazed. But one voice carried it further than the rest. It reached Baron Keller inside his floating citadel. Keller sat alone, reading the message over and over. Your daughter Lyra has been seen speaking. The human did what no healer, no scientist, no noble could. His hands trembled as he crushed the report in his fist. His pride burned, his blood boiled. No human will undo my legacy, he growled. She was mine. She is still mine. He sent his guards with a single command. Bring her back. That evening, Jay stood outside the house, his eyes watching the horizon. He felt it in his bones, something was coming. Trouble stirred in the distance. Lyra stood beside him, close but silent again. Not from fear, but from thought, from choice. She reached for his hand and held it tightly. Her grip was firm, no longer afraid. He looked down at her and smiled. We face it together. And for the first time she answered, not with silence, but with words. Yes. It was soft, broken, and beautiful. One word, one promise. She wasn't going back. Not as a possession, not as a shadow, but as herself, a voice that would shake stars. The sun had not yet risen when the colony alarm began to ring. Its sharp cry echoed across the valley like a warning from the stars. Doors opened, boots hit dirt, and worried voices filled the air. Jace already stood at the edge of the settlement. His blaster at his side, his eyes were locked on the black shuttle descending from the sky like a metal vulture. A crest burned onto its wings, the unmistakable mark of Baron Keller. Behind Jace stood the settlers, confused and tense. Behind them stood Lyra, her hands shaking, but her eyes steady. They're here for me, she said softly, her voice still, cracked, still quiet, but this time it held no fear, only truth. Jace turned toward her. You don't have to face him alone. She stepped beside him, head held higher than ever before. I'm not afraid of him anymore. The shuttle landed with a hiss of steam. And armored guards marched out in perfect rhythm. Behind them walked Baron Keller himself, tall and sharp like a blade. Dressed in rich robes of crimson and silver, he stopped just steps away from Jace and stared past him to Lyra. So it's true, Keller said coldly. You found your tongue at last and wasted it on a human. Lyra didn't flinch. Jace stepped forward. She's not going with you, Keller sneered. She belongs to me. No. Jace replied calmly. She belongs to herself. The guards moved forward, ready to seize her, but Lyra raised her hand, surprising everyone. Her voice came out soft but steady. Stop. The guards froze mid-step. All eyes turned to her. Keller narrowed his eyes. What did you say? Lyra took a deep breath, then stepped forward, facing her father fully for the first time in her life. Her chin trembled, but her legs did not move. She stood on her own. I said, stop, she repeated. Louder this time. I'm not going back with you. Keller's eyes burned with anger. You dare speak to me like this? After everything I gave you? You gave me silence, she said, her voice cracking but clear. You gave me fear, shame, and pain. You never gave me love. You never gave me a chance to be more than your disappointment. The crowd was silent, every breath held in place. Gosh. Jace's chest swelled with pride. Keller stepped closer. You think this human changed you? Lyra's voice rose, stronger. He didn't change me. He saw me. He waited for me. He let me be quiet until I was ready to speak. He gave me something you never did. Choice. Keller raised his hand in anger, but then froze when he saw something unexpected. Behind Lyra, dozens of colonists stewed, humans, aliens, children all, watching silently. And not one of them stepped away from her. Some even stepped forward, one by one, until she was no longer alone at all. Keller looked around and saw the truth. She was not his prisoner anymore. She was their friend, their hero, their voice of strength, and he could do nothing. "You will regret this," he hissed, backing away slowly. "This is not the end." Lyra took one final step toward him, her voice calm and powerful. "For me, it is." Keller returned to his shuttle. His guards silent behind him, the engines roared, and the ship lifted into the sky, leaving nothing but dust behind. The people cheered, not loud, but with claps, tears, and quiet smiles. Jace turned to Lyra, eyes glistening. "You didn't just speak." She smiled gently, her voice softer now. "I finally said what mattered." That night, the stars above the colony seemed brighter than ever. The fire crackled outside Jace's home, and Lyra sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea. Children played nearby, and one of them, ran over and hugged Lyra's side without warning. "You're my hero," the little one whispered. Lyra looked down at her and whispered back, "No, I'm just me now." Jace smiled as he leaned closer, "And that's more than enough." Lyra looked at the sky, the charm in her hand glowing gently. Her voice, once lost, once hidden, was now her own, and though it had taken a lifetime to be heard, that one voice had changed everything.